Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about manners. Everyone has an opinion about these important niceties. What were you taught? What did you teach your kids? What are you actually doing at the moment? Join us for laughter and fun as we tackle this touchy topic. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about manners. It seems that every generation has their own ideas about what's polite and what's not. In fact, I'm sure we've all seen things that were once considered impolite become acceptable, and that seems to be the general trajectory of manners in general. But no matter how casual society becomes, we still need manners, and we still find ourselves confused in certain situations. So today we're going to tackle some of that confusion and hopefully have some fun along the way. And I'm looking forward to this topic because it is lighthearted, but I think we're going to learn something.
Mm-hmm. Do we want our moms to listen to this? I mean, because I'm thinking there's some things that are going to come out that they're going to think, oh, Mindy doesn't do that anymore.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what, we were taught one thing, but yet we might not have done that with our kids. So
So this is going to be interesting.
Yes. Well, first of all, the reason this came up was because of a Southern Living article that Julie sent us, and we are going to refer to that article throughout the episode. But as with many things, we only need a small kernel of something to jump forward and jump off into a completely different tangential discussion. So we will reference that article, but we're not going to stick right to it.
Listen, we can talk about anything, right?
Yes.
We can go down rabbit holes all day long.
That's right.
And I didn't look up the number of this episode, but I'm thinking now that we did a generational differences episode, and I'll have to link that in our show notes because that might also be fun for people. I actually had some older ladies come up to me and say how fun it was for them to hear that because it was good for them to hear like what younger people think and even like what our like young adult kids thought about certain things because you don't always get that generational perspective.
Right.
Yeah. But manners, I mean, first of all, are they outdated? I mean, why are we even talking about this? Why is it even important?
Well, I think some people have the manners of a caveman these days, it seems. So I think it's very important to talk about because manners, and I tried to teach my kids this, that manners show that you have respect for other people.
Right.
And it just makes you generally more pleasant to be around. And I think maybe that they've kind of gotten a bad rap with the very youngest generation just because they seem to be kind of distancing themselves from rules and the social norms and things like that. But it's really not about you. It's not about how you're perceived. I think that's what they think. Like they're stuffy, they're old rules, like it's all about how you're perceived, like maybe from a certain class or whatever. And it really isn't. It's not about you. They exist for the benefit of other people.
Right.
I think it shows maturity when you have manners and you understand that the way I act impacts people around me.
Right.
All the time.
It reminds me of the episodes that we have done where we read Miss Manners. Isn't that the name of her article in the Real Simple magazine that we've taken? Because it's all the general population interacting with each other, trying to figure out how to do it better, wondering what my rights are, what somebody else's rights are, and where to draw the line. But I was thinking even the word manners is not very popular anymore. I feel like even when I was younger, I used to hear the comment like, where are your manners? I
mind your
hear
manners.
that. Yeah, mind your manners. Where are your manners? And it's just not maybe something that I hear parents saying as much. Not that they're not correcting their children, just the particular word, is not necessarily as popular.
And I think in general, people just care less and less about what other people think of them. That's kind of just the attitude of the culture, I think.
Right.
Not necessarily I'm saying people I know, but I'm seeing it just kind of seems like the general cultural attitude is about your rights and exerting those rights and just, whatever makes you feel good.
Well, I saw this description and I thought it was a good one. It said, the rules of good manners are the traffic lights of human interaction. They make it so that we don't crash into one another in everyday behavior. And I thought that was a good way of looking at it because a lot of times I need to know the why behind a rule And so if I knew why that was considered polite, just like we know the rules of the road, we know why we should yield for this or yield for that because we might die in this situation or because this person has the right of way. A lot of times if we know the why, and maybe that's kind of where society's gotten off track, it's because we're just told to do this, but it doesn't make any sense. Maybe we've just thrown this rule out there to our kids, but we've never said why or what the expectation is. And I think when you don't explain things, that's when they do fall away because people are like, well, why was I doing that? I don't know. I don't know how that came about. I don't know why that's polite.
Right.
Yeah, there are some things that seem so archaic, like they just don't even make sense. But I think, I was just thinking of like maybe like swearing in public, and that's something that a lot of people might say, well, that I don't have a problem with that. Well, that's not the issue. Like you might be around someone that does. So it's always thinking about the other person, or, burping at the table. Well, maybe, if you don't have a problem with that, but maybe the people you're sitting next to do. So it's just about thinking about them. And I'm not saying you never do those things, like you can't have fun and let loose, but you just need to know your crowd that you're around, like when it's strangers or people you're not, not close to, you need to kind of know your audience.
I was going to say, speaking of the swearing thing, Steve and I were out hiking on Sunday, and when you brought that up, Julie, this story just came back to my mind because this guy was following us on the trail, and we would kind of pass each other. Like we would stop for a second, and then he would pass us, and then he would stop, and we would pass him. So finally, at the end, we mentioned something about that, and he goes, "Oh yeah, this trail will really F you up," and I was like, "Really? Like just casual out in the nature? Like this is just how you talk to strangers?" I mean, he's not mad. This is how he makes conversation.
It's just his language.
And it didn't stick out to me in terms of manners, although it does now that you mentioned that. It just stuck out to me in terms of whoever taught him to talk. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, just no awareness that someone might not appreciate that.
Yeah, or when is it appropriate? Like, I guess maybe if with your friends, but I mean, these are two strangers that are older than you. Like, we were a good 10 years older than him on the trail, and that was how he made conversation. So it was just surprising to me. Surprising, but shouldn't have been really.
Right. But that's the thing is depending on where you've grown up, how old you are, what part of the country, there are different sets of rules for different sets of people and different generations. And so I think anytime, you have these human-made rules for living, they're not going to match up with other people because they're flawed. We're all flawed. So unless it's coming from the Bible, which is perfect, like we have these rules and some of them are archaic now and some of them are arbitrary now. And so we have, a generation of questioners saying kind of like, why did you do that? Like, that doesn't really, make my life better to do that. So why am I doing it?
Right.
One of the things I liked that the author of the article, she's a Southerner who lives in New York, in New York City. And she said, in New York, I did not require my children to say, yes, ma'am, no, sir, because New Yorkers didn't expect that and they really didn't prefer that. So that's just not something I taught. But she said when they visit their grandmother and their grandmother's friends in Memphis, they say, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. So and she said, and that isn't that the way manners are supposed to work? They're a guidepost. I think she used the word guidepost to learning to navigate, different situations and that you adapt. Like you don't expect other people to adapt to you. You adapt to the situation.
I did love that, Julie, that she used that example because it really is a loving act towards the other person. And so that was something I had to learn when I married into Bryce's family. I was raised to say Mrs. and Mr. and Sir and Ma'am. And my mother-in-law actually was offended when I called her Mrs. Silman. She genuinely was offended. And it took me by surprise. I wasn't used to it, but she really did say several times, like, I really do want you to call me Carol. She said, it makes me feel old. I think of my mother-in-law, I don't think that that's me. And so she loved it. And I had to embrace that, though I was uncomfortable for a little while calling her by her first name. But I mean, as we all grow into adulthood, we get away from that and have to call adults by their first names. And it's like, well, that's an adjustment anyway. But yeah, it was loving for me to use what she wanted me to call her.
Yeah. So the best manners would be to do what she preferred, not stick to some set of arbitrary rules.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
One thing that came to mind too, do you remember the book we read? Well, we read parts of it, the Jordan Peterson 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
One thing that just really stuck out from that book that I even wrote down was that, as parents, we need to teach our kids to like fit into the world. And I mean that in a good sense, not like fit in bad ways, but just learn how the world works and then teach them how to operate in that system. And, kids who are taught to be polite and kind, like taking turns and sharing and using kind words, they're the preferred playmates. They're the ones that the teachers, I don't know, seem to favor and like and help out and give the benefit of the doubt. Like, you're giving your kids tools to succeed. And it's not like you're doing it as a game to gain things, but it's just, that's the way the world operates. So why not teach your kids this? And because it's going to come out eventually when they're adults, if they don't have manners, in their workplace or some social setting. In this article I was reading, kind of preparing for this, it said 85% of career success is directly related to your social skills and your ability to like build relationships. And so that's a pretty big, percentage of your success. So beyond your knowledge and your ability, in technology and all that, like you gotta have good social skills.
Right.
Well, my kids have said he basically takes people out to dinner for a living. So let's get started with table manners. And what are some of the things that you guys have found yourself say at the dinner table umpteen times to your kids? Like, what are some of the manners that you kind of did die on?
No phones right now. If we're all at the dinner table, I don't want you on your phone. Then it comes down to no wrestling, no sporting equipment on the table. Wash your hands. Please put your feet down. I don't want to see your feet on while I'm trying to eat my dinner. I mean, like, you think these things are like...
No, I so relate, Mindy, because when you have a lot of kids, like with my first one, I used to actually wash her hands before I put her in the high chair. And, it'd be like, dinner, everybody wash your hands. And that was when I had 2 kids. And then you add in 2 or 3 or 4, and it's like, okay, I don't even really care if they wash their hands. First of all, they're probably going in there and pretending to wash their hands anyways. If they want to get sick off that, be my guest. Now it's more like, can you just show up when I actually call you with a decent smile on your face? And one of the things I find myself constantly saying is, put your leg down. Like, why do people have to eat like with their knee in the air up on the chair? Like, I shouldn't see your knees at the table. Like, could we not just sit in the chair? And this is like all ages. Like, I'm still saying this, you guys, and I have my youngest are 18. I don't understand. When you go to a restaurant, do you put your knees up on the table? Like, I don't understand.
And can the chair stay on all fours the whole time?
Oh, gosh. I even have to tell my husband that.
Yes.
I mean, we have tried maybe we try to not talk with our mouth full. The polite things of maybe like, we're going to try everything on the plate and maybe not criticize the person that made it. But honestly, like, I feel like my table manners for the bar has gone down over the years. Do you guys feel like that?
Yeah, I feel like when they were little, boy, I was working on all kinds of things,
Right.
Like waiting till everyone has their food to eat, and that's something that you notice as adults when you're out, like, if your kid's just diving in,
Oops, we didn't cover that at home.
Or we're going to ask the blessing first, or not getting up from the table until everybody's finished. Do you remember? I mean, my parents, I had to say, may I be excused from the table. And you waited till everybody was finished because you were talking. And those things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been a long time since I've had kids around the dinner table, so I'm kind of going back to what I was taught.
Even with teens, it's like they just get up and get their own dessert, and I'm still eating. It's like we're not moving on to dessert yet. Like I'm still eating.
Yeah. Right. And
they're cleaning up. They're taking their dishes, to the sink, and I'm on bite 3. So that means I'm going to be eating alone, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And that we haven't even gotten to polite dinner conversation. Like there's things that you should not talk about at the dinner table. And so Bryce and I have joked that we have to go to nice restaurants every once in a while with the kids so that we can like be social in public and know that they're going to know how to handle a restaurant. But that's something I found it when we were on the cruise ship is every night we were talking through etiquette at the table, things like that, how to handle like a waiter, or just everything. Like it's just these things that we don't practice at home ever. So we have to go out into public so we can see how we are perceived by the public.
Yeah.
And that's a good point because I think kind of with a fast-paced society and people don't eat at the dinner table as much or they eat at different times or I know sometimes I eat standing at the bar at the house, at the island. And so you don't have the opportunity to put all these things into practice. So it's good to do that occasionally.
When I was little, let me tell you how far I've come, because when I was little, we did practice dinner etiquette and manners. And it got to the point where my mom was so frustrated with my brother and I, maybe my dad too, that we had these 2 little pigs from a board game and she would put them on the table and she called it pass the pig. And if somebody put their elbow on the table, you got the pig. And then we were watching like a hawk for basically who's in trouble, right? Who's going to get the pig because, and that included all types of etiquette and manners. Talking
I love
with
that
your mouth
idea.
full. So then it was whoever ended up with the pig at the end had to clean up from dinner.
Oh, there has to be a consequence. Yeah.
That was my mom's game.
That's a wonderful idea.
I mean, seriously, she could become a millionaire right now just by marketing that like they do off on the shelf, pass the pig. And people would buy that and they would use it at the dinner table.
Good idea. Well, yeah, at least you can say, I taught you better than that. When they don't get the job or the second date or their in-laws are appalled at their eating habits.
And, sometimes that's how you feel with your kids. It's like, I did the best I could without seriously damaging our relationship and making dinner a miserable experience every night of my life.
Well, I think that's the thing is to come away from it. Again, the relationship is the most important part at the end of the day. And so it's different if you're actively raising children versus they've left the home and even coming home for college visits. Like they're still like young enough. You're like, oh, I really should tell them because nobody else is going to tell them. And then they'll be rejected by society. You think, but yeah, and then there comes a point where, I don't know if you guys have noticed that there's a point or age that your child is that you're like, I'm not telling them anymore.
Right.
I would just say, I wish I had maybe spent more time explaining, like you said, Mindy, like, I don't want to see this, because other people aren't comfortable seeing your foot at the table. Like, it's not just about the rule. Like, well, Miss Manners says no feet on the table. Like, even the elbow on the table, I really don't know what that's about unless it just looks like you're like trying to crowd out other people for your food. Like, I don't know where that came from, why that's not polite, but that's probably something that I wouldn't hang my hat on,
Right.
Right. If we could all just have one general rule, because it's a pet peeve of mine, can you please just chew with your mouth closed? Yeah. Can that just be a general rule, like for everybody?
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking etiquette, and Julie, you explain what you meant by this one. You said, like, what we call people, how to respond, because you must have something in mind here.
Well, I was just thinking about what I was taught, and I was never allowed to say, huh? To my mom. Like if she said, Julie, blah, 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 and I didn't hear or I needed her to repeat it, I'd go, huh? Or what?
I do remember that now.
And boy, it was like, do not say huh to me, like it is ma'am or, or
right.
or
yeah.
And I just, think, well, gosh, that's probably gone long out the window.
Well, do you remember, like, I remember teachers saying, hey is for horses. So, like, maybe we would have tried to flag her down and say, hey. Now it's like, if you get a text message like, hey, girl, it's like, oh, well, we're cool. We're together, whatever.
Yes.
They like me.
The informal, is celebrated.
But there is a time that's appropriate. Right. I think it's when you're talking to, I don't know, parents used to be in the category of ultimate respect, and they're not now.
Right.
I can't really even think of a time I've heard my kids say, huh? There's probably something else that's replaced that, but I can't think of it now.
Bro, what?
True.
And it wouldn't even like, huh? Like it would just be, huh? Just that wasn't an acceptable word to speak to someone, respectfully. And I did grow up saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir. And I always called my mom and dad's friends, Mr. and Mrs. whatever. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would do their first name, like I might, Miss Marie. That's what my kids call my friends. And even to this day, I cannot call my mom's friends by their first name. Like now, I guess if they asked me to, weird? I would, like you said, Mindy, but I just still call them like I'm like, when I first learned to call them something, that's what I still call them. And
And I do appreciate that. I always taught my kids to either say like Miss Julie or Mrs. King. And sometimes we would have kids come over to the house that would just call me Marie. And it was a little off-putting. I mean, it wasn't that I didn't like those kids. It was a little like, hey, you're 8.
Right.
You don't get to call me Marie.
And you didn't say anything maybe, but that's one of those things like...
No, I didn't say anything.
That's noticed. It's noticed, though, that it's...
Yeah. But then as the kids grow older, then I kind of started to see less formality as just being comfortable around you. And also you're more on equal footing. Like, really, if someone's over 18, they probably should be able to address me by my first name. I mean...
Right.
Unless there's I'm in authority over them or I'm their boss or something like that. But at what point can you start to address people by their first name if you can't do it once you yourself become an adult? I can see like you're not used to it or you don't feel comfortable because there's still people that my kids call Mrs. King or different things. But just that if they met someone new and they wanted to call another adult by their first name, at what age can you do that? Yeah.
Well, I think it's more that they maybe just met them and they are equal, whereas your kids have known me since they were babies, so they see me differently than someone they just met. I think that's probably more the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I remember when Abby went to college, it was kind of a popular thing for friends to start calling their moms by their first names. Like the girls.
Their own moms?
Yeah, their own moms.
So like Abby would call you Mindy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Like so it was just like this time that I remember a marked difference. Like it was very, very different. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like this is this new phenomenon, of these high school girls and college girls calling their moms by their first names. And I remember Bryce heard somebody reference me as Mindy. He said later, he was like, what is that about? He said, that was so weird. He was like, is that like a thing? Because it was just so different. I had gone from being like the older, the mom, the whatever, to being Mindy. And you're just not used to hearing your name. You're used,
Right.
So
it always kind of made me sad to hear someone call their own mom by their first name because you've lost the title. Like you're always their mom, no matter how old. Like my mom's 85. She's mom. I would never call her Sue. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah, I don't want my kids to call me Marie. I want my kids to call me Mom.
Yes, agreed. I'm glad Abby didn't stay into that because I'm Mom.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what about communication etiquette, written, including emails, texts? Julie, what were you thinking of when you put this one down?
Well, the article that I read talked about like digital natives, people that grew up always, with emails, texting, that kind of communication. And we're more like digital immigrants. We've had to learn to adapt. And so I think there's a generation gap there in communication. And we've talked about that before, like punctuation, spelling, emojis, acronyms. I was thinking about that. And none of it's inappropriate, but I guess it might be in the business world if people. The article talked about like young people doing that and older people not understanding.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard my husband talk about this in the business world, that it takes a while to train somebody coming out of college the correct way to do a business email, to talk to a client, to come up with a proposal, because there are certain rules that you would only know by reading a bunch of them and kind of through experience. You can say all you want, I should be able to talk any way I want, and who cares about punctuation, who cares about spelling, who cares about my grammar, but I promise you they care in the business world.
Yes.
They do. And this is not something that's being taught as widely as it used to be. And so it's interesting. This can also, I'll even throw in cursive handwriting in there. The kids, when they get a card from an older adult that has written cursive, half of my kids can't read it. And then formal writing is something that we're coming face to face with, that at certain schools, it just wasn't grammar. How to write a formal letter is not always taught. And so even my son that's taking the ACT, like he's learning a lot of grammar rules that he's never come in contact with before, because everything's been so informal with his education.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes there's been a push for, well, what's the idea behind what they're saying? And let's grade that. Right. And maybe we don't come down on the mechanics of writing, but the mechanics of writing say something about the writer, and they really need to be addressed too.
Yes.
Yeah. My son, who's still in his 20s, has said even at work, he's noticed communication being unprofessional, like way too informal. And he's still young,
Right.
Yeah. So there is that. I mean, the three of us, we don't really have a lot of formal writing needs. So I'm just going off of what I hear people talk about in the business world. But I really do think it's a thing. And if you're whatever environment you're going to enter, you need to learn what's appropriate for that, and you'll do better.
Adapt.
Right.
Right. Well, what about interacting with strangers and public behavior? What did you have in mind for this one, Julie?
Well, the one that immediately came to mind was holding the door open for someone, which I think most people, well, I don't know. I guess in my day, when I was taught, it was that a man held a door for a woman. And the phrase that you always heard was ladies first. I mean, I even have a son that still says that, because we taught that. We said ladies first, like if we're going to go through the line, like if we're going to fix our plate at home, like eat it buffet style, the ladies go first. And, and I, now, I mean, I might hold the door open for an old man. You know what I mean? Like it can go either way. It really can. And I'm not offended. Like, I don't take it that man thinks I'm not capable of opening the door. I just take it as a nice gesture,
Right.
Yeah. Right. I see people hold the door. I look at it basically, you kind of hold the door open if somebody's coming in close behind you, man or woman. You just kind of hold the door.
Yeah.
Right. It's polite.
And also, I was thinking about giving up your seat. We don't do a whole lot of public transportation around here, but maybe like at a restaurant when you're waiting on a table.
Right.
I remember asking my kids to give up a seat for an adult to sit down,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do think that's important. Like, if somebody's pregnant, I don't know, I feel like if you're a man or a woman and you're perfectly capable of standing and there aren't any more seats, someone ought to give up their seat for that woman. Or if it's a very elderly person, like, not even man or woman, just if you're able-bodied and perfectly capable of standing there, then give it up for somebody who may need a little bit of a rest.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, interacting with people in public, what other kinds of things might there be? I think just in general, we do tend to be more polite to strangers than we are sometimes to our own family. I don't know if anyone has ever noticed that, but I like to kind of observe my kids out in public, because a lot of times they're acting better than they would at home. And that comforts me, that out in the real world, where they're not as comfortable, they really do remember what I said.
Yeah.
Yes, I do love that my boys work at Chick-fil-A because they do interact with the public. And sometimes they have situations where people want to tip them because they're so nice. And other times they have people rip them a new one because they dropped something. Or, you know what I mean? Like they have to deal with all types of people.
Well, and Chick-fil-A requires mannerly employees. So.
Yeah.
So it is just, I think it's such a great environment for them to be working and dealing with the public, interacting with all types of people.
It is thrilling to walk into your teenager's place of work before they see you and see them doing a good job. It's so edifying, like to see them interacting with the public, whether it's like as a cashier or person making the food or person taking the orders, and to see, oh my goodness, look at them. Yay!
Yes, they're doing so good. And I loved that. Like I watched one of my boys, he did drop something right in front of the customer and the customer didn't look happy at all, but watching him take ownership, apologizing, humbling himself, but still being, kind and kind of taking it, like I made a mistake. I feel bad, but, trying to make it right for the customer. I'm like, I'm glad things like that happen because we all are going to fail people that are around us at one point or another, and how to kindly and gracefully humble yourself. Because I think that's when it comes down to it, manners, dealing with other people, it really is a setting yourself aside act. It is a putting someone else in front of you. It's considering other people. It's looking around and realizing you're not the only person in the room or on the planet, and thinking, oh, maybe, how could I make their life better? Or what would be good for that person, instead of always, what do I need?
Right. Well, none of us have public service jobs, but we are out in the world interacting with strangers. Do you create small talk? Like, do you talk to the grocery store clerk? Do you talk to the waiter about something other than your order? Like, what do you guys do when you're out there in the world?
I kind of go through phases where I engage the clerk or the waiter. And then other times I just want to get in and get out. And it can be exhausting to do that. So I find myself really changing up how I am. Like some days I'm up for that, and then others I'm not. But I always feel good when I do. Like I know they appreciate it. They seem to come alive. Like they look forward at their job or whatever. But then when you have a personal conversation, they seem to come a little bit more alive.
Yeah, I can remember when my kids were little, I never went through the grocery store line and didn't have a cashier say, "And how are you today?" and make a comment. I really think that has fallen by the wayside. Almost, you can practically check out and the person won't have even had to say a word to you, especially now that so few checkouts are open.
There's even a person there.
Or they have earbuds in,
or you don't want to take up any of their time because there's 6 other people that would like real human to check them out too. So you don't want to slow the line down. But I think a lot of those niceties have maybe gone by the wayside because so many times there is just the self-checkout, and there is just, we don't have to make that kind of, even when you place your order like at Panera, you can go up to the counter or you can just stand there at the computer and never talk to anyone.
Well, I have noticed a big difference with living in large cities and also now living in a small town. And let me tell you, the small town, give yourself some extra time. You're going to have so many sweet conversations with so many sweet people. And I love it. I love the pace of life, the unhurried chit chat,
Right.
But, there's a time where, I'm not feeling good. And I'm like, oh, I have to go in the public and I know I'm going to see somebody I know. Like I better gear myself up to being polite and kind and all that stuff. But I think it's wise though, kind of like you said, Julie, like maybe watch how the checkout person is interacting with people. Like sometimes they don't want to talk to you, sometimes they do. So I think it's just, again, just kind of an awareness to, are you open to conversation? Are you looking at me? Are you got your head down and your earbuds in? Okay. They don't want to talk to you. And I think the polite thing to do is just leave them alone.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a big difference between small towns and bigger cities. I can remember when I grew up in a very small town, and I can remember my mom saying to my dad, "You don't have to wave at every person we pass."
Oh, yes, you do.
But it's like in small towns, people wave to each other.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. And even in the neighborhood, I feel awkward if I pass someone walking in my neighborhood and I don't wave. Like, that seems rude.
I remember my dad driving with his hand on the top of the steering wheel, and it would just go up in a wave.
Flip the fingers.
And I remember I would ask him, Dad, do we know those people? Who is that? And he goes, I don't know. Like, he didn't have to know them to wave. It was just what you did.
Right.
It does make me a more polite driver, because I do think, and I'm like, okay, I cannot be in a hurry, and they're going to know who this is in this minivan. Like, trying to weave around you and get someplace really fast.
Yeah.
Well, Southerners are often criticized for being like, if they're talking and chatty, that's kind of fake. Like, oh, they don't mean it. And not even just Southerners. I would say Americans in general, like Europeans, don't tend to do that. So that's a kind of a criticism. Do you think that's true or not? Do you feel like it's fake?
I don't think it's fake to like be making polite conversation in the grocery store. I think it's fake when anybody is nice to your face and then mean behind your back, but that's just a general principle. I don't know that that has to do with making polite conversation.
Well, I guess some people would say, do you really care? Like, I think that's what they mean. Like, do you really care how their day is? Or, because you're going to say fine, most likely, and stuff. But I liked what the author of that article said. I wrote it down. She said, I hope we, in our best moments, see every person as valuable and worthy of the best manners we can muster. Everybody deserves to be seen and heard. Like, you can say something,
Yeah.
You can. I think where it falls apart, and I will say the northerner southerner thing here, since I've recently experienced both, is something I noticed when we were up north. Is it's not so much that they don't want to talk to you. It's like the southern cliches. Like, they're over it. If you want to have a real conversation, I'm open to having a real conversation. But it's when you I think sometimes if you're throwing in these cliche comments, bless your heart. I'm just going to put that out there. Or, like you're not being genuine. That's just, again, it's not as accepted to not be genuine. And so, because I found plenty of people willing to talk to me, but it was just like, are you real? Are you genuine? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Like when we visited Boston a lot, it's one of our favorite cities. And I know before we went, it was like, don't make eye contact on the street. People don't, it's kind of considered rude. Like, they don't want to engage with you. And, just keep your head down, keep walking. And that generally is true out on the street. I mean, people are busy. They're using public transportation to get places. They're around a lot of people all day long. But if you have the time, and my husband has been a great example of this, like, he has made so many friends with people up there because he's willing to sit and talk with them and engage with them. And they are willing, but there's just, I guess they see it as there's a time and place for that. Not getting to work on the subway. You know what I mean?
Again, that's a big city too. You know what I mean? Like, I found that big cities, no matter where you are, people are trying to get places.
Right.
And you can't possibly talk to everyone. You would never get anything done.
Yeah. And older people, and I'm starting to include ourselves in this age group, tend to have more time to talk. So like when my parents go on trips around the country, they are forever telling me stories about people they've met. Random strangers that they've had entire conversations with all over the country. Like, it doesn't matter where it was. I think because they actually had time and the person could see they were genuine and wanted to have a conversation, and they were talking about, mutual interests or whatever. And I'm just amazed by how many friends they make on all their trips.
Yeah, but if you have a basket at the grocery filled with kids, you don't want to sit and chit chat at the.
You're just probably not at the stage of life where you can do that. Yeah. If you started talking to the cashier too long, one kid's going to catapult off the cart and crack their head open, and the other one's going to pull the other one's hair. Like, you have so many other things to be thinking about.
Right.
So maybe as we get older, we will discover the joy of doing that more too. Just having time.
Yes.
So after going over some of this, do you guys think there's a decline in manners or just a decline in formality?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little of both. I mean, it's definitely less formal, but we've all talked about there's still a need at some point to be more formal, like around certain people in certain situations. But
Right.
I read this article and it was a British survey, and they were interviewing millennials and Gen Zers. And they said 4 in 10 millennials refuse to give up their seat on public transportation for an elderly or pregnant woman. 40% say, no, I'm not doing that.
That seems sad to me.
I know. 1/3 now ignore etiquette, like they cut in line, like that's okay, cutting in line. 84% say please, thank you, and holding the door open for someone is just simply old-fashioned. But they do have idea. It's not like they have thrown all manners out. They have other things that are very important, like reading someone's email, looking at someone's phone over their shoulder, announcing some kind of news on social media before the person has had a chance to do it themselves. Like those are huge social faux pas. So they do care about some things, but just not those things. So that kind of made me sad.
Well, I feel like please and thank you. Just how can you get rid of please and thank you?
I guess that's small talk. That's chit chat. Like you just expect, I don't know.
I like to be thanked and I like to be said please to.
Yeah. Right.
And not because I think I'm better than the other person or anything else, but I also like to say please and thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's one of those things that just greases the wheels of society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look where we are. It's not a very polite society.
Right.
You just, my husband has a lot of time to watch news, so he's always showing me things that happen on airplanes now. You get people in a small tube in the air and sitting close to each other for hours, and it gets pretty ugly sometimes. So, a little please and thank you could go a long way to smooth things over.
I also do totally concur with the don't look over someone else's shoulder and read their phone or read their email or, I mean, I can see both. Like maybe we could have those manners and some other manners.
Yeah, I agree that those were rude. Those are rude things to do, but I don't think we have to forget the other things.
But I guess it's good for us to learn this because if someone younger than you doesn't say thank you, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a complete commentary on their, character and there's some kind of reprobate. They just might have a different value system and they're probably polite in other ways. Like maybe we shouldn't just, I don't know. I feel like sometimes if people don't comply with a manner that you think is important, you just write them off. And that is not really the way to foster good relationships.
I think the best thing to do is just keep modeling what you do know is right. Just to keep doing it so that hopefully maybe they see how that feels. That it feels good.
Isn't that a rule we learned when we were little? Treat others as you want to be treated. And that was kind of the rule that that we were supposed to model, I guess. Right. But I do, you asked if it was a manner or if it was an issue of formality. And so I definitely, haven't you guys noticed how even, I'll call it dress code has changed since COVID? Because see, like there is a difference with pre-COVID and after COVID. And I mean, I'm athleisure all day long, whereas I could have never gotten away with wearing workout clothes outside of the gym when I was younger, and now like that's just common. And that I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a formality. I think it's not necessarily a manner.
Well, let's just go really quickly down this list because these will be just some of the things that change or that have changed throughout time. Like thank you notes. Do you always send a thank you note?
I mean, it's more like a thank you text these days.
Yeah. My mom always said if you've thanked the person when you opened it in person and they were there to see you, you don't have to send a thank you note. It was more like if someone had sent you a gift. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
My mom wanted me to send a thank you note. And I asked Molly to do that for all her shower and wedding gifts. And I don't expect it, but I still would do it.
Right.
Yeah, I guess definitely for showers, even if the person watched you open it. I guess I'm thinking about like when I invite aunts and uncles to my kid's birthday. If they're there and they see the kid open the present, I don't have them send another thank you.
Yeah, that's family. That's more intimate. But,
right.
You just never know what other people
I definitely think shower
polite.
and weddings is like that exception where you go overboard on the thank yous. If there's a doubt, just send a thank you note.
Right.
Well, you think the person has taken time, money, thought to buy you a gift and to take a day out to come to the shower and the wedding. Like, it is a lot, and I think that I loved what she said. Don't get hung up on a long, like you can just say, dinner was great. And I think she said, and so are you. We loved it. Like that's all you have to say. She was thanking them for a dinner, but I loved the shower gift and that you were there. Like it doesn't have to be long and wordy. And I think people get hung up on that and then it just gets overwhelming.
Right. Right. I totally agree. I grew up having to write thank you notes, paper, send through the mail, thank you notes like you guys. But I didn't always make my kids do that. So I definitely, I'll say, dropped the ball on the formality that I just thought, well, you just need to, especially if they weren't present, like you said, Maria, like if they're in person, and they're thanking them for the gift right there, then that's different. But if it was sent through the mail, then I want them to at least send a text or call. And so, yeah, by the wayside with the paper notes through the mail.
I mean, in this day and age, if your kid called someone to thank them, I feel like that's even better than a thank you note. Because a personal phone call from a young person, I mean, they just don't make a lot of personal phone calls.
That's just as a rarity as a thank you note, really.
It's true.
Right. So you should be honored if you get a phone call.
Yeah.
Well, what is your go-to comfort food to take to someone in need?
Something cheesy.
Okay.
I always take a casserole and I do try to make it homemade. I mean, I can't do it every time. Sometimes it's like barbecue from the local barbecue place, but it is nice. I think about all the homemade meals we've gotten and something cheesy and like we do rotel chicken spaghetti or this beef noodle bake that's like Pioneer Woman. I like to make those. And a salad and bread.
Yeah. I feel like I used to always do lasagna. But I feel like with all the things that people avoid nowadays, lasagna has fallen out of favor, and I'm afraid it would just go right in the trash. So it's so hard to know what to give people. Can we just, I mean, when Abigail had a baby, a lot of her friends just gave her Uber Eats gift cards, and I'm kind of like, hey, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know.
Listen, I did learn that I couldn't have just one go-to meal because especially I would always ask or try to find a way like what's everybody else kind of thinking, because I do remember hitting the point of everybody did some sort of red sauce pasta dish. And so I was like, okay, so those have all been taken. Now I have done big ziti quite a few times. If I don't see a red sauce pasta dish on the menu, typically that's something that like kids and families will all enjoy. But I mean, I've done like Mexican stuff. I've even done like bought fried chicken from Publix and made all the sides and that, it's just, it depends on the person, the situation, and whatever else they're receiving.
Yeah, I love those meal train signups because you can see what everybody's bringing and then you don't duplicate it.
Yes.
Hostess gifts. Do you guys bring hostess gifts? And if you do, when? Like, is it every time you go somewhere?
I'm bad at this. I really am. And now I'm even surprised if somebody does give me a hostess gift when they come. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I should do that.
Yeah, I'm bad at it too. I mean, I am always genuinely surprised. I don't ever think about somebody bringing a hostess gift. And I usually don't think about the fact that I could have brought a hostess gift until I'm pulling up to their driveway and I'm like, oh, shoot, she brought me a hostess gift last time and I never even thought about it.
I know my mind doesn't go there.
But Julie is good at hostess gifts. She still brings me one sometimes and I've known her forever. Like, I feel like there's like a statute of limitations. If I've known you long enough, we don't need to do hostess gifts.
Well, this is my rule. Like, if it's a party that I could have had to host, You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like if it's a life group party and I'm not hosting, then I'm going to bring a hostess gift because I'm not
Okay.
hosting the party.
You're so thankful you're not throwing the party.
Right. Or what's the easiest to do and what I like to do most, and this could be for anything, like it could be I'm just coming over to your house for dinner or book club or whatever, just if I have flowers that I could cut and just bring, you know.
And she has brought me like hydrangeas or even dried flowers, you know, and that's so sweet. I just never, ever think of it.
Me neither, Marie. I feel terrible.
Or don't you remember, I mean, I can see your parents doing this, Marie, like, because they have a garden. My neighbors would always come with tomatoes in hand, or here's a bushel of green beans, or like, those are the best gifts.
Just something.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, what could I even bring? It's like, I don't know. Everything's half open. It's not like I have things in my pantry that haven't been opened yet. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
But yes, I mean, I really do appreciate it when I get one, but I certainly don't expect one. And I'm always surprised.
No.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about graduation announcements? We just went through graduation season. And if you live in the North, we're in June. So you're going through graduation season right now. Graduation announcements. I saw somebody on Facebook comment, like, what do I do when I receive people's kids' graduation announcements in the mail? Do I have to send a gift? And what do you guys think on that?
I do. I think
you feel like you have to.
I feel like I need to. Yes. If somebody, in fact, I have several cards sitting downstairs and it was on my Target run, like graduation cards and either cold hard cash. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but I do feel that I should send that graduate something.
I feel like having just had 2 graduates and then one last year, I feel like if I'm sending graduation announcements, okay, first of all, let's just be honest. You're probably going to receive things from relatives. So if they receive a graduation announcement, they're probably going to send something. And when you receive one for their kids, you're going to send something for their kids. But I think this person was referring to, like, I haven't seen this kid in 5 years and now I got a graduate. I sent some to people that we knew 20 years ago in New York State just because I want them to see my girls. Not because I think that they're going to send me any money or I expect any money or I want anything. I'm proud that I have a graduate and we've taken these senior pictures. And when you order a package of cards, a certain number comes and you want to share them. And so I wouldn't want just everybody who received one to think, oh, this is always just a big, huge money grab. A lot of times you just want to share that this is a big thing in your event, in your family, and you're proud of your kids.
And that was a good reminder because I get bogged down with that too. It's like, do I send a gift? And, like there have been years where you might have 10 lined up on your counter, like you got to get off. And I always felt obligated to do it, but I don't think I will anymore. I mean, I think because, we know fewer and fewer kids anyway, you know what I mean? Like that are close to our family. But yeah, I do think it is just an announcement.
Because I don't think that the people expect me to send something. So like if it's for my kid, I'm not going to have my kid expect that everyone we send something to is going to send something to them. So that's on the part of the sending. But on my part of receiving, I do want to send them something.
Well, and the people that you haven't kept up with, that's who you really want for them to see. Like if they haven't seen your child since they were 5, you don't expect a gift, but you do want to send it out because you want them to see where they ended up.
All right. Well, listeners, we would love for you to let us know what you think about this episode. We actually had a listener in our Modern Miss Manners episode a few weeks ago. We had the question about the wedding and whether you had to provide a vegan dessert. And we went all around about what we should do. And then someone emailed us and said, I just always keep a bowl of fruit that I know that anyone can eat by stuff like that. And I was like, well, what a genius. What a great solution. And none of us thought of that.
She said it didn't have to be a baked dessert.
Right. Yes.
Really smart.
Maybe you guys have some opinions on what we've talked about today, and we would love to hear them. Come and find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast or email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, let's real quick do I'm a Fan. Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
All right, I'm a fan of following Southern Living magazine on Instagram. And that's where I actually found the article that we referenced today. When you follow them, they have great recipes, great travel tips all throughout the South, great plant advice, like everything from how to prune your hydrangeas to repotting an orchid, and a lot of it is regional specific, obviously. So I guess if you lived in other parts of the country, you might follow Coastal Living, or I don't know. I guess there are other comparable things, but I've always loved Southern Living magazine, and I don't subscribe anymore. But if you look in their stories, there's just direct links to all their articles, and so it's really nice.
I wonder if other magazines do that too.
I know that's the way I read articles now, whereas my mom used to always provide me, no matter where I lived, with that subscription. But
me too.
I don't have any subscriptions for magazines anymore. So but I always enjoyed reading those articles, so I appreciate that, Julie.
Yeah. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a new movie that's in the theaters that apparently a lot of other people are a fan of. We went to see Maverick. As a family this past weekend. We were a part of the biggest opening weekend ever for Tom Cruise, apparently.
Wow.
It was amazing.
I hear that.
So listen, I was sitting in the theater, and I could remember sitting in the theater as a child watching Top Gun for the first time. And so that is just full circle. And then they did such a beautiful job of having enough nostalgia with also having a whole new story. And so literally, I think there's one F word in the entire thing. It's pretty clean. They don't even have like the sex scene that like Top Gun. It was cleaner than the Top Gun movie. And I bring that up because when I was a child, my mom told me I needed to go to the bathroom when the sex scene was coming on. And I said, no, I don't. She said, oh, yes, you do. And I went to the bathroom. Listen, so they started to have this scene in the movie, and I really felt like I needed to get up and leave. But I stayed, and it was very clean. So it just is a clean, good movie. Definitely, heroes among us in the movie. Like it's a good representation of heroes. I want to age like Tom Cruise. I really, seriously, he is a constant learner, and I was stunned. So Maverick, great movie, great experience for my whole family.
Oh, well, that's good. I bet there's a lot of listeners that have seen that or want to see it. So it's great to hear about your experience. I am a fan this week of a new toaster that I got. Okay, only in midlife can you be super excited about a toaster. But I had a cute toaster, and I shook it up and down over the sink. You know how to get the crumbs out? And something got stuck in the mechanism, and then it wouldn't work. And even though I tried, so I was like, darn, I need a new cute toaster. And I ordered the same one from Amazon, and the coloring was off. And I was like, no, I'm going to have to start my search all over. So to save you having to search, I will link to this one in the show notes. And I sent you and Julie a picture of this toaster. It's called the Hayden Dorset 2-slice wide slot stainless steel toaster. And I got it in the putty color. But it's so retro looking. Can you guys see the picture?
That is adorable. I love that color.
Yeah.
Me too.
And it's so cute. It looks like, I don't know, is it like 1950s or something? The shape and the way it's
with
made.
The dial.
Yeah, with the little dial and the buttons. It's super cute. I can't put my toaster away. It just has to sit on the counter all the time because we used it so often. So
it's a fixture.
I like to have a cute one. So if you are looking for a cute one, I'll put a link in the show notes, and you can look this one up. It comes in white, putty, or a cute red. So
I ordered a little matching tea kettle with it.
Yes,
I know. Look at that.
I know. I saw that. And also they have it on Amazon. They have it on Target. I think you'd be able to find it in a wide variety of places. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Sounds great.
Bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.